When my boyfriend approached me last year, asking me to play a space game, I was honestly hesitant. I did think he meant the Outer Worlds at first, which I have actually played, at least for a few hours. But space and sci-fi isn't really my favourite genre, but he seemed very eager to watch me play. Like, he hasn't been this excited for a game in a while. I started up the game knowing nothing, and I think it's best played that way. Despite starting it for him, I stuck around for me. The music and the visuals were charming, and yeah, I'd say it's one of those once-in-a-lifetime games. If for whatever reason you're here and you haven't played the game, please leave and play it. I urge you. So, it's a year later, and I've only just now played the DLC. I think I wasn't sure how it was going to slot into the timeline, and given how neatly the base game wraps everything up, I didn't feel rushed into it. I knew I would play it eventually, but you know when you're reading a really good book, and you maybe delay finishing it for as long as you're able, because you don't want it to be over? Maybe there was some of that rationale to blame. I also get quite emotional thinking about the base game. It's very bittersweet. Either way, I re-downloaded the game, and I'm here to share my thoughts. I've tried to avoid watching analysis videos about Echoes of the Eye in an attempt to keep my opinions my own for this video. So, getting back into the game, I headed over to the museum and the radio tower as instructed, and after counting the known locations in the photos, I spotted the anomaly. I love how the DLC slots right in. It doesn't feel out of place. We, once again, are responsible for figuring out what to do. Following the satellite was admittedly tricky at first, but when the stranger first comes into view, and then accelerating into the eclipse, gosh, it's so cool. Seeing the ship up close was quite intimidating. I had only seen the promotional cover art for the DLC, and had been told it was scary, but it felt very alien and very sci-fi, quite different from the colourful geometry of the Nomai. Moving past the light-operated door and stepping onto what seemed like a platform, the space in which I was about to be dropped was honestly the last thing I was expecting. I immediately said Elysium, and that's what it really is. It's not a ship, it's an entire ring planet. I didn't think the devs could impress me further, but the sheer scale of this place, and this is just a DLC. When I arrived, I did not think it looked too barren, but now I just want to see what it looks like when it was first constructed, or better yet, the home planet. I steered to the right and headed towards what I will now call the cinema. Taking note of the similarly operated doors, light plays a big role here. I like that we are so quickly introduced to the way these inhabitants look via portraits. Albeit scary, they are a combination of owls and elks, and I also thought snakes at first, but that was just a misinterpretation of the feathers for scales. I love the way the slides are illustrated and accompanied by matching music, the burned sections adding obvious intrigue. What are they hiding? And who are they hiding it from exactly? Watching these back in retrospect does allow you to notice smaller details. And I love that opposed to the Nomai's heavy use of text, these guys love their pictures. Leaving the cinema and hopping back onto the boat, it really is like a theme park ride. The river connects all, and kind of gives a more linear path to follow, should you choose to do that. The boat itself is very easy to control, and super responsive. It looks as though it may become frustrating at times, but I personally never had any issues with it. And the music, the song that kicks in when you're cruising, just reinforces the feeling that you're on this epic adventure. It's so good. I listened to a podcast wherein the devs say they took inspirations from the Pacific Northwest and New Orleans and such, and it really is so nice to be amongst nature like this, like an extension of Timber Hearth. One of the upsides of playing this game with someone else is that they hold you accountable. I've quit my fair share of games, not to say I ever thought about leaving this game, but I can see how some people may get frustrated, figure it's not worth their time. There is no hand-holding. Sure, the game is not incredibly difficult, but it does rely on you and your curiosity. I know this has all been said before, but I am saying it again. We know there is no skill tree or upgrades, you're leveling up your mind. The puzzles are contextualized and they make sense for the world they're in. Though I did kick myself for not figuring out things sooner. I always want to get things right, and I want to be smart enough to see things others maybe overlook, but that's just not always the case. Sometimes that very pressure, heightened by being watched, makes you overcomplicate solutions. So yeah, I am blaming my partner. But I will say I did notice the scratched out portrait in the small cabin next to the tower, and later connected that to the missing figure in the upload room, and the suspiciously bigger shaped sarcophagus. I think finding this upload room, as I will call it, was one of the first real moments of horror for me. The upper floor, with its brightly coloured paintings, reminded me of the mausoleum puzzle from Act 2 in Baldur's Gate 3, my love. I assumed that there was a required number of lanterns for each picture, and began moving them all to the backmost piece, and in doing so, I removed enough light to find the hidden passageway. Then I saw them. I'm not sure what I expected to be down here, but I don't think it was this. Again, it was always in the back of my mind that this DLC was considered scary, and so I found myself anticipating something, anything that would fit that description. And yeah, this scared me. The basement of an old rickety building, lined with the unmoving gaunt corpses of uncanny owl creatures, falsely animated by the green flickering fires. It was incredibly creepy, and still is. I thought maybe there would be a jump scare, one would snap their neck and look my way, but nothing. I had found the passengers, and this was all that was left of them. Naturally, I wondered what the hell was going on down here, and I thought it could be a pilot room of sorts, like they had to sit here to power the ship. Approaching the fire, I of course toasted a marshmallow, as any Hearthian would, and of course ignored the doze off button, thinking, okay, I know this is a helpful mechanic in the base game, but I don't need that here, so I leave. When I approached the second upload building, downstream, and gained access to this basement, I wanted to observe the room some more specifically the fire. Maybe it's not normal fire. I'll just touch it. Problem was, on the way here, after the dam breaking and my poor jetpack skills, I had damaged my suit, so much so that if I had touched the fire for 1 second longer, I would have been uploaded, and actually solved a puzzle. My boyfriend audibly gasped at this point. He knew, but I managed to save myself. When I finally did doze off in front of the fire, waking up and all the figures were gone? No. Not my sweet little space game. Combined with the newly lit artifact we were holding, and the fact that we had the option to conceal the flame, why would we have to do that? Why would we have to hide? To my boyfriend's laughter, I began to realize why people said this game could actually be scary. Of course, the base game had horror elements. The anglerfish, the impending destruction of the entire universe, and that one kid on Timber Hearth that wonders what his life will be like when he grows up. But I didn't expect stealth, and to actually see another species moving around. I know we physically meet Solanum, but she's our friend and she doesn't move much. The first area I entered in the simulation was the big house in the Hidden Gorge, which is arguably the worst area, and switching off the lights to be met with the wails of the owls, as I will call them, it's oh so creepy. When you first boot up the DLC, they ask you if you would like to turn on a reduced frights mode. This is also when my brain started ticking. What do you mean, frights? This is a very considerate move, and I think that especially with games so poignant as this, easing gameplay mechanics to encourage completion is nice. I actually switched this on at one point to see what it was like, and I think from what I can tell it slows down the movement of the owls, but I switched it off because gamer. Whilst I do think it's creepy, stealth is always nerve-wracking. At the end of the day, they're protecting their home and their secret slides. We are the intruder. They should be more scared of us after all. But the way they creep towards you, and then when they do get their hands on you, the pull back into simply blowing out your light? Hey, that's not so scary. At least they don't snap your neck. Oh no, they do that too. It's interesting when you blow out the lights in the house that their first response is panic and that there must be an intruder. But I imagine they had fixed routines and a common understanding with each other that you don't just cause a blackout on a whim. So whoever did this is not one of us. I wonder if they anticipated this happening. Someone eventually boarding the stranger? Which makes me think back to the burning of the tapes to begin with. And who was it all for? Reaching the concert lodge or music house in the simulation. Now this is creepy. It's shrill yet melodic. And somewhere in there I hear part of the Doctor Who theme. But anyway, what a great moment when you walk up the stairs and you're surrounded by them, and they all just stop. I actually couldn't figure out how to get past them. I thought maybe I could blind them with my light, but I did eventually ask for help from my boyfriend who mentioned the dam breaking. This was actually so sad to see. Their last screams as their light is snuffed, but it does mean I could get to the fireplace, so... I like that when you do get to the required areas in each zone, and find these secret slides and the frame codes for each chain, you are met with disappointment, later realizing that you never needed any of the codes, only the knowledge to bypass them. clipping out of bounds within the river's loading screens, walking away from your lantern's radius, and disabling the ability to hear the bells in the real world, thus bringing you out of the simulation. Very Inception-like. I can't quite remember my specific journey and the sequence in which I discovered certain pieces of information, but watching the reel with the Elder Owl collapsing and passing within the AoE of the fire stumped me. I had no idea how to die in that room. I can't drown. I guess I could slam myself around with my jetpack, maybe? It wasn't until I stopped thinking about it, just decided to go there, that I realized. I suppose the owls were originally routinely woken up by the bells, for food, water, some exercise. I wonder at what point they decided to just stay asleep. Was it the threat of the ghost matter? Which also makes me question if the prisoner was also afforded this, since there are bells above the fire there. Was someone swimming down or raising their device to feed them, to let them out of their coffin? Perhaps these were just installed for those wanting to maintain the locks in the simulation, and were not often used. The coffin could also just be soundproof. Finding out that this large sarcophagus was simply in the reservoir after only seeing it in slide films was strange. It was so accessible, yet not. Then dozing off here to be met with a similarly locked coffin, whoever or whatever was in there, they never wanted it to get out. I know it is pretty early on that we understand how the owls came to be in the universe. They saw the signal from the eye, but did they interpret it as such? I suppose maybe not by the name we know it as, but rather as a celestial being, which seemingly was reaching out to them. Were they searching for something like this before? Is this why they gave up everything to follow its signal? It's interesting to speculate on what they expected from their voyage, maybe their own utopia, thus no longer needing their home planet anyway. Regardless, something I've thought about was the fact that they never returned to their home after finding out what the eye really wanted. I know you can say, return to what exactly, but maybe they could try to encourage growth back on their home planet whilst living on the stranger? At least then they could be back in their own solar system. But I know likely the main reason they wanted to stay was to maintain the device blocking the signal, to ensure that it was forever kept silent, and they could still visit their home virtually all the while, the best of both worlds. I do find it difficult to sympathize with the owls. Of course I do. I don't like to see anyone make life-ruining mistakes and get upset about it, but did they really have to destroy their entire planet in the process? The irony is not lost. Watching this tape was probably the most shocking part of the game. They loved and still loved their home more than anything, but gave it all up for the promise of the eye, whatever that was to them. Assuming the timeline with the sun station, and the fact that the owls managed to reach the solar system long before the Nomai, they have been in this simulation for a while. No longer needing their physical selves, they can live in their endless dream. This sparked a debate with my boyfriend and I as to whether that would truly be you inside the simulation. Can your consciousness and or soul truly be separated from your physical body? Or is it just a replication of you? That's too heavy to get into here. Regardless, I think being inside for so long must have made them husks of their former selves. I understand they were scared, but I cannot fathom how that justified the treatment of the prisoner. Complete isolation. Much like the eye, but hey, it's a nice cell. They have their telescope and video camera projector thing. Maybe they felt a little remorseful after burning their original house. Obviously, from our perspective, they saved the universe. They secured the future for all those who would come after. But the owls didn't lock them away to prevent this specifically. I assume the message gained from the eye was minimalistic, and didn't mention that this universe still had some thousands of years left. Then I too wouldn't be so keen as to lose everything right away. I understand reprimanding someone breaking the rules, but this is too severe. And they are so nice, and a fantastic artist and musical performer, and we never even know their name. The little film we showed them was lovely. It perfectly encapsulates our story, to show them that all their time spent locked up wasn't for nothing. And the cry they let out, be it from happiness, sorrow, or just a release, was heartbreaking. That's why, even though this game does have a happy ending, it is incredibly sad. And why just hearing a few seconds of the title screen music makes me well up, thinking about everyone whose lives were cut short. Speaking of sad, the fan edit that the prisoner makes for us, I'm getting upset just thinking about it. Seeing their footprints in the sand, what a life. It's okay though, in my mind we are both sailing to the undying lands, and everything is fine. Upon freeing the prisoner and then reaching the eye, I'm so glad they join us at the campfire. And after everything they've been through, they still vouch for their people, saying that they were not always like this, they were not always so afraid, and that they understand should we wish to not remember their kind. But of course, we would remember them. And I guess no one knows what would happen should you deny them, because no one would ever do that. When everyone starts playing their instruments, the Prisoner's Edition is so beautiful, in an unsettling, melancholy way. It does sound quite different from everyone else, but it harmonizes perfectly. It's like singing, or an animal calling out, but it's shaky and hesitant, and I'm getting upset again. I love this DLC. It's not what I was expecting, but it exceeded everything I could have imagined. Thank you, Mobius Digital, for this adventure, and thank you to anyone that stayed this long to listen to me. I really love talking about games, and I hope to make similar videos in the future. If you would like to subscribe or like this video, that would be lovely. I know we all just go to our homepage for content these days, so you wouldn't even notice. Oh, and something I wanted to say is that the OST for these games reminds me so much of the album Weather Vanes by Freelance Whales, especially the song The Great Estates. I don't think they make music anymore, but that album is excellent. Okay, definitely too rambly now. See you next time.